Hi, my name is Simon Howard and I'm a solution architect at Micro Focus. This video looks at the different ways in which you can perform a static code scan using FOD, Fortify on Demand. So there are 5 ways in which you can perform a static scan. You can do a manually initiated scan, you can use our FOD uploaded tool, you can do so from a supported IDE, you can integrate a scan with your CI pipeline, or you can create a tool that uses the Fod REST APIs. So let's look at each of these one by one. So with a manually initiated scan, you actually start the scan from the Fod browser interface. You have to zip together into literally a zip file your source code and dependencies. That's called the payload. And then you upload that payload, the zip file, to Fod using the Smart Scan wizard. Before you do that, you have to define these scan settings on a form, which is basically this one here shown on the right-hand side. Now, the pros of taking this approach is there's no integration effort required at all. And it can indeed be the quickest way for you to perform a scan if you have access to all of the code and dependencies. A con of this, or the cons, are that it's possible, in fact quite often happen, that you might miss out the dependencies from the zip file if you don't know the structure of your code. So it's very important that you know that. If the dependencies are missed out, or some missed out, there's a good chance the scan will be rejected. There is a really good video, it's actually on YouTube, that describes the process of performing a static code scan. So with a scan that's initiated from Fod Uploader, you're actually using the tool that we publish on GitHub, and it's available in binary and source code formats. Now, when you use this tool, scans are initiated from the command line interface or from a script that you've created. Again, you have to zip together all the code and dependencies into the payload. When you use the tool, you specify a number of parameters, including obviously the zip file name, some authorization credentials, typically API key and secret, and the application release and details that you're targeting, where you want the results to go, if you like, on the Fod tenant. And you can do things like get Fod Uploader to poll for the results. So you can potentially integrate that into some tooling. You get feedback essentially on the status of the scan when it's completed, what the results were. The pros of this approach is that there's no integration effort required, much like a manual scan really. And it can be a quick approach if you have access to all of your code and dependencies. And also not shown here on the slide, but it is a good approach to take if your zip file, your payload is particularly big, because if it's particularly big, you're going to basically lock your browser. And actually we have a limit of roughly around 500 meg for a payload when you're uploading it from your browser to your tenant. The cons of this approach are that, like for a manually initiated scan, you have to have the dependencies in the zip file. You have to put them in there and you have to know where they are. So again, you have to know the structure of your code. If you want to learn more about using the Fod Uploader tool, or Fod Upload, then there's a good video on YouTube in our channel to show you how to do that. What about scans initiated from a supported IDE? Well, so we have plugins available for several IDEs, including Visual Studio, IntelliJ, and Eclipse. And when you initiate the scan from within the IDE, really good thing is that the plugin packages it together, all that source code and dependencies for you. And then it uploads the payload to Fod, and then the scan is initiated. Also, when the results become available, you can also get them within the IDE, you can triage them in one place. So a real strong point, a pro if you like, of this approach is it's ideal for a developer workflow. You perform scans in the same environment in which you build, and because you're doing that, and because you're already building that environment, dependencies will not be missed. So it should be successful. The con of it though is there's some integration required, in the sense you've got to obviously install the plugin into your IDE, but that's not really a lot of effort. And it's a manual process, not automated. If you want to know more, for example, there are a few videos on our channel. This is an example of the video that tells you how to install the plugin into Visual Studio, and how to use it. What about scanning from a CI pipeline? So we have plugins available for several CI platforms, including Jenkins and Azure. And you can integrate with other CI platforms, for example, Bamboo, using our REST APIs, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. All you do is add an additional stage to your pipeline, and then that would cause, when that pipeline is run, for that scan to occur as well, whether that be on a commit, for example, or nightly. The plugin packages together all the source code and dependencies, and then that's uploaded to FOD and the scan starts. And you can include scan statistics as well in your pipeline results. The pros of this approach is it's obviously a fully automated approach. And because everything's in place, because you probably build already within that pipeline, then dependencies will not be missed out because you have to do dependencies in order to be able to build. Additionally, you can also fail builds if your security policies that you defined on your tenant are not met. The con of this approach is obviously you have to do some integration work. You have to integrate Fortify with your pipeline, but we make that reasonably easy for you. And you do need to consider the frequency of scans that you perform within your CI environment. In other words, for example, if you're performing a lot of CI initiated builds, you need to consider, well, do I want to do a scan every time? Because I'm going to get a lot of results published. So you need to think about that. If you want to know more about how you integrate with your CI pipelines, we have videos on our channel. This shows you a video where we talk about how you integrate Fortify on Demand with the Azure DevOps pipeline and what you can do. What about scans initiated from a tool that you create using the FOD REST APIs? So we have a bunch of APIs that are available to you that enable you to automate a lot of what you can do within FOD, and that includes scanning code. A good reference point for the REST APIs is actually the FOD uploader tool that we talked about earlier that's available on GitHub. You can download that Java code, and that will show you how to use the APIs. And we have lots of customers that use these APIs in different ways, including Java, but also using things like PowerShell. Now, on the right-hand side, you see a screenshot from a Swagger page relating to the Start Scan Advanced API, which is an API that's actually used to initiate the scan. The pros of this approach is that you could create a fully automated mechanism to do a scan, but also do other things, like, for example, generate reports all in one go. And you can do what you want in that respect. The con of the approach, though, of course, is that you require development effort. You've got to have somebody who knows how to use REST APIs, how to write code, of course, and then you start working on actually creating that tool. That concludes the comparison of all the ways in which you can perform an FOD scan. I'll see you in the next video.